All right, we're looking at the pool accessibility lift. This makes it easy for people with disabilities to access the facilities and take a swim. It's relatively simple to use. There's clear, concise instructions with pictures on a sticker on the back of the device here. Anyone can approach this and use it. Before use, the battery pack needs to be plugged in. The first step is removing this protective cover. The protective cover guards it against splashing and water. The battery pack itself is the top portion. This lower portion actually has some emergency controls. For whatever reason, if the remote's not working, these emergency controls allow you to control the lift. When you need to charge the battery, as you can see here, we do. Our battery indicator is showing low power. We simply unplug the battery pack, grab the latch on the top and squeeze it, and it comes disconnected, where we can take it to our charger and charge it for at least 4 hours. After charging, we simply bring it back to the lift, align the battery with the latch, and you'll feel it click into place. Then reconnect the battery, and of course, reinstall the protective cover to prevent splash damage. Now the lift is ready to operate. So one feature of the handicap lift is the remote control. It can be utilized by the person in the lift, but more typically it'll be used by somebody assisting the person in the lift from the deck. There's 4 buttons on the control: up, down, rotate left, and rotate right. To utilize the lift, once the person's in the chair with the safety belt on, you simply rotate out over the pool. And once you are perpendicular to the pool deck, then you'll hold the down arrow until you're submerged in the water, and you can exit the chair and enjoy a swim. Once you're done swimming, with the chair lowered down into the water again, you climb into the chair and hold the up button until the chair's all the way up, and then rotate left again until the chair is out over the pool deck and you're out of the pool safely and securely. Part of routine maintenance is keeping the skimmer baskets clean. The skimmers of the pool draw water from the surface where most of the particle contamination is. Any particles that are large enough will get trapped in the skimmer basket. Anything smaller will go through the filter and be trapped there. To clean the skimmer basket, all you need to do is take off the lid, remove the basket, dump it in the trash can. Once it's clean, reinsert the basket. Most critical thing is to make sure that the lid goes back on. That's a real safety hazard if the lid's not securely in place. Also located on the pool deck, we have safety equipment that is accessible in the case of any injury or a swimmer that's in need of life-saving. So the first item is the lifeguard float. This can be used by someone who's saving a struggling swimmer in the event of an emergency. The next item is the backboards. If there's an injury where there's a suspected spinal injury or neck injury, this is available so that the person being saved, spine and neck, can be immobilized while they're transported to get medical attention. And the next item is the shepherd's hook, the long sturdy pole with the blue shepherd's hook on the end. That can be used to save a swimmer in distress without putting the person saving them at risk, because they can stay outside of the pool and pull the person to safety. Also included in the safety equipment is an automatic defibrillator. It's located just outside of the pool room, mounted on the wall. It's a medical device that automatically analyzes the heart rhythm and applies electric shock to save anyone in the event of a cardiac health emergency. The last item is just a basic first aid kit. Any small injuries that happen, that's on hand to provide first aid. Okay. This is a basic chemical test kit. It tests for 6 parameters of water chemistry. The first is chlorine, and combined chlorine, pH, alkalinity, calcium, and cyanuric acid. Using this test kit is very simple. You follow the directions on the lid from top to bottom and left to right. Going through each of those tests, you'll collect the data and write it down in your chemical logbook. Okay, so we are looking at the chemical controller. When we were looking at the test kit earlier, of all of the variables in that test kit, this handles the two most important variables, chlorine and pH. The other variables will need to be tested for and treated once a week to adjust those levels manually. The way that this controls the chlorine and pH is with these two sensors. There's a chlorine sensor and a pH sensor. Water from the pool plumbing is diverted through into this sample stream where it's monitored electronically, and the chlorine and pH adjusting chemicals are dosed automatically based on the values of those sensors. The oxidation sensor, it's not sensing chlorine, but the ability of the water to oxidize, which is related to the chlorine level. So anytime the oxidation level is low, it adds chlorine. Anytime it's high, it doesn't add chlorine until that level has come back down. The pH adjustment is an acid feed system because the chlorine is a type of chlorine that raises pH constantly. When the pH goes high, it will trigger the acid feed to lower the pH. So using those two acid feed and chlorine feed, this is able to keep the most important variables perfect 24/7. The only input that's really required from the user is to maintain good calibration for the probes. What can commonly go wrong is that the pH calibration will wander. So the procedure to address that is, when you take your test readings using the test kit, you need to verify that your pH reading matches what's displayed from the reading of the probe. If those two don't match, then the chemtrol just needs to be calibrated so that what you get with the test kit and what shows on the screen are identical. One component of this chemical controller that needs a little bit of attention is the water flow sensor. The controller has to verify that there's flow going through the system so that it doesn't feed chemical without getting fresh water as a sensor feedback. So this water wheel, if it's spinning too quickly, it'll wear out very quickly. And by opening this valve, I can increase the speed of the water flow and increase the speed of that sensor. It's important for me to dial it back so that I have good, consistent flow, but it's not making the water wheel spin too rapidly, which will cause it to wear out quickly. Other than maintaining calibration, this system it's basically hands-free and maintains near perfect chemistry 24/7. Okay, we're looking at the pool chlorinator. This is an AccuTab system. It uses calcium hypochlorite tablets, and it efficiently dissolves them to add chlorine to the pool water. This works in conjunction with the chemical controller. So when the chemical controller senses that the pool needs more chlorine, it sends a signal to this outlet that triggers the chlorinator to start feeding chlorine. And you can hear the device is getting a signal and chlorinating right now. Anytime service needs to be done, this switch allows you to interrupt that signal so that even when the pool is running, the chlorinator is turned off and you can access and service the device. Normal service is just going to be maintaining a full level of chlorine tablets in the chlorinator. Usually you want to have it at least about half full or more, and about once a year it'll probably need to be cleaned and descaled. So because it's a calcium-based chlorine, that calcium can build up and create scaling on the inside of the chlorinator. When that's done, you remove the entire top portion and you would descale the area below. Okay, now we're looking at the acid feeder. This acid feeder uses sodium bisulfate acid pucks that are much safer than hydrochloric acid. They're non-fuming, so they won't damage the room. Just like the chlorinator, when you need to service it, you simply turn the signal switch off. So with that switch off, it won't get a signal from the chemical controller to feed while you're servicing it. Okay, anytime we're actually handling pool chemicals, we need to be wearing safety gloves and safety glasses. That'll keep us from getting any chemical burns on our hands or in our eyes. And Yeah, it looks like we actually need some acid in the acid feeder. So I'll show you just how easy it is to add more acid tablets. Okay, inside of the device, it's partitioned so that it's easy to stack them evenly so that they dissolve evenly. Then when you're done adding pucks, you put the lid back on. The other important thing to consider is the valves. The valves that direct the water flow through this device need to be in the correct position. So we've got an out valve and an in valve. Those two need to be in the on position. This diverter valve needs to be slightly closed to create flow through that system. With everything back in the right configuration, we can now switch the switch back to on, and now it can get a signal from the chemical controller to feed acid as needed. So generally speaking, the UV system, this is the controller for it, and power supply, generally it's going to be pretty hands-off. It takes care of itself. With dosing, it gets data from the flow meter and from the ultraviolet sensor to control the correct amount of dose. So this system's going to be on all the time. It's really not going to require much user input or anything hands-on, except for during backwash. Now, one thing to keep in mind, you should check periodically. You know, when you're doing maintenance in the room, you'll just check this screen and see if there are any error codes. If there are any error codes that are solid, make a note of what they are, and then they can be cleared by hitting the F5 button. If the error code is blinking, that means it's an active code and that the unit's not going to run, and those codes cannot be cleared. So then you'd need to refer to your user's manual to start the troubleshooting process. To see what that error code is and what the potential solution could be. Now, the one error code that you will see eventually is when the bulb needs to be replaced. So that can be expected. The bulbs typically last about 10,000 hours of operation, which is just over 1 year of constant on time. So after that period of time, you'll get an error that the UV dose is low, and a good place to start with troubleshooting would be to look at replacing the bulb if it's been a year since the previous bulb was replaced. Other than error codes, the time that you're going to address this controller is before a backwash. You're going to turn it off and let the bulbs cool down, and after the backwash, start it back up. In conjunction with our chlorination system, we also have a UV sanitation system, and that really has some advantages along with the chlorine. The first advantage is that the specific frequency of ultraviolet light that penetrates the water using this device sterilizes any microorganism that flows through that chamber. And the reason that's valuable is there's quite a few organisms that are harmful to humans that are highly chlorine resistant. So neutralizing them with ultraviolet light gives us a layer of protection without having to add very large amounts of chemical that we'd otherwise have to do to solve those same problems. The other big benefit of this system is that it continually eliminates chloramines. So when you're chlorinating water, anytime chlorine combines with an organic, it forms a chloramine. And in a swimming pool with a high bather load, you're generating, sometimes the chloramines get ahead of the chlorine. And so now you've got a high level of chloramine in the water. And chloramines are what have the strong chlorine smell. They're irritating, they turn your eyes red. They're bad for your facility and they're bad for your water chemistry. And the benefit of this system is, normally, when we want to eliminate chloramines, we have to shock the pool. And in an indoor pool like this one, shocking can be troublesome because now you've got a lot of chlorine gas in your swimming pool area. You know, that can rust ductwork, and generally it's very inconvenient, at least. So the benefit of the UV system is chloramines are eliminated continuously. So it all but completely eliminates the need for weekly shock treatment that would normally be necessary. So a couple of things with the operation of it. One is the bypass valving. So we have a bypass valve and 2 isolation valves. So in normal operation, we want the water to flow through the unit. So the bypass valve should be closed and the 2 isolation valves should be open, allowing water to flow through the unit. If we needed to service the unit or for any other reason we wanted to take it out of service and bypass it, we would open the bypass valve and close the 2 isolation valves. Then we're free to work on the unit and not have to worry about water contaminating our work. The other couple of things to note on the unit itself, one is this air relief valve. So what can happen if this unit gets a bubble of air trapped inside of it, when the bulb turns on, it'll overheat the temperature sensor and cause an alarm and cause the unit to shut off. So with regular maintenance, this bleed valve needs to be opened periodically and left open until water comes out, so we know we've eliminated all the air. We've just eliminated that air bubble so that we won't create the high temperature trip unintentionally. The other item on top here, that is the UV intensity sensor. Using that device and the flow meter, the unit is able to give it just the right amount of UV to accomplish what we need it to, without going for too much intensity, which would wear out the bulbs sooner and can affect the water chemistry. Other than those instances, this is going to be pretty hands-off. You know, it'll sit here and do its work without any help. Another important part of our pool system is our filtration system. Water is circulated and filtered 3 times a day for a turnover rate of 120 gallons per minute. Our pool pump pumps the water out of the pool and through the filter, and then the clean water is returned back to the pool. So that filter collects all the debris and small particles in the water. And periodically it needs to be cleaned out, and we clean it out by backwashing the filter. We know we need to backwash the filter when the flow rate drops below our normal flow rate, which is about 120 gallons per minute. With a fresh clean filter, we'll start off at about 125 gallons per minute. When our filter gets down to about 110 gallons per minute, it's time to backwash. That being said, the filter should be backwashed every 2 weeks, even if the flow hasn't come down to that level. So the first step in backwashing the pool is to do the turn down. So there's 4 things that need to be turned off before flow through the pool system is stopped. The first is the acid feed system, also the chlorine feed system, and then the other 2 are the heater and the UV system. The heater and UV system need to be shut off at least 5 minutes before water flow is stopped to allow them time to cool off. Either one of those pieces of equipment can be damaged without that cool down period, and even without significant damage, the UV bulb will be caused to wear out faster if it's not shut off correctly. We are taking a look at the UV control and power supply. The time that when you're actually going to need to manipulate this system is when you're backwashing or stopping flow. So to stop flow, you'll hit the F4 button when it's in normal operation. Once you hit the F4 button, a countdown timer will start for the cool down period. Once the cool down period has ended, you will reach down to the main power switch and turn it to the off position. That way, this cannot re-energize the bulbs while our pump is off and potentially cause some damage. Once backwashing is complete, or whatever service is complete and flow is restored back through the unit, you'll power it on by turning on this main switch. Once the main switch is on, you'll get a countdown timer. After that countdown's over, just a couple of minutes, hit the F1 button to energize the bulbs. And the bulbs will go to a lower power setting to start warming up, and then after a countdown, they'll go to a full dose. So once we've turned off all 4 of those devices, we can go ahead and backwash the pool. The first step to backwashing the filters is to stop the pump. Now that we've turned off our pump, we can backwash the filters. So this is called a multi-port valve. It directs water flow through the filter, and in filter mode, it's pushing the water down through the sand and then collecting at the bottom, and the clean water comes out and goes back to the pool. In backwash mode, it's actually pushing the water up from the bottom of the sand and fluidizing the sand bed, churning the sand, and any of the small dust particles will go out to waste, out to the sewer line. So the key with this valve is you can never move this handle while the pump is on. So the pump always needs to be off before you touch this handle. Now that our pump's off, we'll switch both of our filters into backwash mode by pressing on the top of the handle and rotating until we're pointing at the word backwash on the label. Now that we're in backwash mode, we'll go back over to the motor drive control. We'll turn on the backwash speed that will run for a preset amount of time, backwashing the filters. The pump will turn itself off. Once it turns itself off, again, doing the same thing, pushing down on the valve handle, we'll turn it to rinse mode, and we'll do this again on both filters. In rinse mode, we're actually filtering down through the sand, but instead of it going back to the pool, it's going out to waste. What this does is it gets the last little puff of dirt or debris out of the filter before we put it back in operation. In rinse mode, we only need to run for 10 or 15 seconds. After 10 seconds, we'll turn the pump off again, move these back to filter, and now we're ready to operate the pool again. And we'll check all of our valves and make sure that any valves that we shut while the pool was off, that we put back in their normal operating positions before we start the pump again and put the pool back into operation. Once the pump's up and running and we can verify that we've got our normal flow, then we can go ahead and turn our chemical devices and our heater and UV system back on. Another feature of the pool equipment room is the automatic water level control. So this controller maintains the water level, and it'll also shut off the fill if the water level reaches 1 inch above the normal set level. And the other aspect of water level control is a drain down. Now that doesn't happen automatically. Anytime water needs to be drained, there's a valve that I'll show you that you can use to manually lower the water level. So this control, it has 2 sensors, a normal water level control and a high water level control. So this normal water level control, I can simulate the water level being a little bit low by lifting this sensor a little bit. So now I see the filling light is blinking blue, indicating that it detects that it might need to fill. And if I let it sit for a minute, this blinking blue light will turn solid blue, and valve number 20, the brass solenoid valve up above, will open and begin filling into the fill funnel, which you can actually see it just started doing. And that'll run until the tip of the sensor is re-wetted and the sensor detects that the water level is normal again, and it shuts off the valve. The high water level function is kind of a backup so that for whatever reason, if the water level gets too high in the pool, which is 1 inch above the normal water level, the fill will shut off. And that's most relevant in a situation where you're filling the pool manually using this valve. When you're filling with this manual valve, you could leave the building and go home, for example, and forget that it's on. As soon as it reaches the high level, it'll shut off the second solenoid valve and stop all filling. One important note about the automatic water level control is the solenoid valves, they completely open the pipe or completely close the pipe. On this pool, when that pipe opens completely, it's a little bit too much flow for the fill funnel to handle, and it'll overflow into the room. So the important thing to note is this valve just upstream of the solenoid valve, just to the right of it, that says fill on it. That valve needs to be partially closed to slow down the flow of fill water so that we don't have an event where we're overflowing the fill funnel. Then we could actually move down here a little bit. I'll show you the drain down valve. So the best way to lower the water level in the pool is to use this valve. You simply open the valve and it drains water into the sump there. Now you have to pay attention to the rate of the water going into that sump pit. There's 2 sump pumps in that pit that pump that water out to the sewer. If I open this valve completely, it'll give too much water to that sump pit for the sump pumps to handle. So when you need to lower the water level, crack this valve and verify that you're not overwhelming those sump pumps. Then close the valve as soon as you're done draining. If I were to fully drain the pool, I would need to close the skimmer lines. Because the skimmers are at the top of the pool, if that line is open, as soon as the water level gets below that skimmer, it'll draw air into the pump and the pump will stop working. So if I wanted to drain the whole pool, I would open this valve and then I'd come to my skimmer valve on the pump and close it completely.